Hello, welcome to Skull RPG Podcast. My name's Dwight Skull.
My name's Jacob Skull.
And today we're going to teach you how to tell your story.
So, Dwight, this is a little bit personal to you because I remember in one of your campaigns that you're running in D&D, our bard happened to charm a growl. And then you had to go figure out how to kill that growl so we wouldn't have a growl as basically a slave for us to use as.
Yeah, so here's the problem. Pre-made adventure, which was my first time running through a pre-made adventure. It's called Return to the Castle Greyhawk.
Mm-hmm.
Or Expedition of the Castle Greyhawk is what it was. It was for D&D 3.5. And my brother-in-law, who, if you've listened to some of our earlier episodes, Matt, he is a min-maxer. He's a power gamer. He decided to play a bard. Okay, no big deal, right? No, except his bard dropped everything he possibly could into dominate and charm monster. So he basically charms his monster, dominates his monster to fight for you. The problem is the monster was at the same challenge rating you guys were at. And the other problem was the monster had something like, 6 attacks or something, and at low level.
Like six tentacles. It was nasty.
And there was poison on it too. Like, this monster was meant to take on 4 7th level players, not become the 5th 7th level player.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what he did. And so, like, you guys are just starting to walk through stuff, and I wasn't talented enough yet to know what to do about it. So when you guys needed to go to town, I said, you guys can't take the grell there. Like, they're going to kill it. Like, the town guard's going to freak out. And they were like, oh yeah, I know, you're right. So when you then came back, the grell had mysteriously been killed from the room that you said to leave it, like, oh, just stay here, don't move. Well, something had come in and killed that grell because I could not allow that anymore. That was sloppy way of handling it, but it was effective. So let me tell you what I would do today. So the problem with Charm Monster and Dominate in D&D 3.5 is it's horribly broken. I'm sure they've gotten it much better in 5, where it's not like this thing where it's like, I can just permanently charm a monster forever because I can force it to fail its will save.
Every 7 days, I just keep casting it on him and have it fail its will save.
Yeah. So what I would do is simply this. So let's say that they do that. Fine. And I'm not playing a pre-made. Then I would just start upping the challenge level of the monsters. So now I would play it as if you had an extra 5th player. So what that means in like a traditional setting is I up the challenge rating by 1 or 2 just to make it on even. And if I give you a challenge rating 5 or 6 levels ahead of you, it's not death necessarily. Or maybe it is, and maybe all the guys killed the monster that you charmed. How weird would that be? Which you guys are happy about with, because you're like, oh, hey, that was nice. We didn't take a bunch of damage.
And now the charm monster becomes a dog. It willingly gives its life for you so you may live.
But the other thing you could roll is you could look at it, and if you think that charm is so horribly broken, you could say anytime that the creature takes a damage, it then gets to make another will save that it cannot be forced to fail. And see if it starts taking multiple damage, it might turn on you. And it's going to be angry. And it's only going to target the person that it's been forced to, because that's exactly, you took its free will. Of course it's going to be that way. So that's one way to do it. So kind of how you may need to house rule the charm and dominates if they haven't done that enough yet for your liking, so that anytime a monster is given a command it doesn't agree with, it gets a will save, and anytime a monster is taking damage, it gets a will save, even if it's dominated. And you might just do a thing where like the save DC is higher for those saves, so it's like has a good chance of it not happening. But the thing is, you can't also just have this, your wizard or whatever running around with 17 charmed monsters at a time. And that's all they do is they load up charm monster for every skill they have. And every day they charm all their monsters to make sure that they can run around with this horde of whatevers with them. So that's one way to do it. Up the level entirely. And then house rule. The other thing I would do with charm and dominate is literally maybe you find out how they're going to rule it and use it, and be really look really carefully what the component costs are. A lot of times DMs don't look at the component costs of spells, and what happens is some of these spells are incredibly, absolutely amazing, but then when you actually looked at what it costs to do. So I remember like the old stone skin, which was great.
Diamond dust for like $3,000.
1,000 diamond dust. So for 1,000 GP worth of diamond dust. So every time you cast it, you had to tell me somehow where you got 1,000 gold pieces of diamond dust. Because I don't remember you asking at the last town if they had 1,000 gold bits of diamond dust. And here's the fun part. You might have to get to some metropolis for me
For
to
that.
find some sort of dude who's willing to, first of all, grind diamonds into dust. Like, how do you even do that? I mean, last I checked, diamond's pretty hard. I mean, in our world, it's the hardest substance we know of. In their world, it's like the third hardest substance. So you got some guy with an adamantine hammer just going to
That
town
helps.
on diamond. I
How
mean,
we do it is like a hydraulic press, so we are talking heavy tech, but
yeah,
having unobtainium and adamantium and mithril does help with that.
at least
But
with that part of
you're
it.
still
But
talking time.
yeah, so you got some guy who's just got a construct made of adamantine or an adamantine hammer, and he just all he does is he just hits diamonds all day long to make diamond dust for your stone skin. Fine, sure. Let's say he has that. How many thousands of dollars worth of gold did you buy? Oh, two? Cool. Well, that's the third time you're trying to cast stone skin, so I'm going to say no. You don't have the components. And you could do that for any high level spell or any spell you think is horribly broken, is to look at those components and make sure that they somehow have them. And yeah, some people might argue that there's some spells around some of it, but not those high costs.
There's feats to help you with the lower level stuff below like 50 GP, but there's nothing for
Nothing
those
that high.
higher.
Right. There's like a spell. There's like a ward. There's in 5e. There's a glyph of warding, which does a lot of cool stuff, but it costs 200 gold pieces to make. Like you have to have 200 gold something that just go away when you cast it, when you make it. And that alone should stop, basically all of your players from just running around with a book of glyphs of warding that they're able just to take out. Because it's like, well, how much was that book? That book was like 20,000 gold pieces. Like, there's no way. So look at the spell components to make sure they actually can. And I would do that on everything, by the way. That would be my suggestion on everything they're trying to do. So anytime the wizard's getting involved and they got these really cool high level spells, like what is the casting cost of that? And if it's outrageous, I'd point it out. I'd rule lawyer on that. They're going to rule lawyer on you on stuff. Now this is the good time for you to rule lawyer on them and be like, oh, well, you didn't like you didn't like how gravity worked in that one little situation, but now, you want to cast a spell that somehow costs thousands of gold pieces and you don't pay a dime for it. And you want to cast it 6 times a day. No, I don't think so. So that's, I guess that's like 3 ways to deal with it. 1, make it harder. 2, house rule some of those harder spells. 3, look really hard at the spell components across the board for all spells that you consider to be overpowered, because they may not be. It's just that you're not remembering that these things actually have a physical cost. Sometimes it's just a feather. That's easy. I don't care about that. But sometimes it's a lot of money in something very specific.
Or something really obscure, like it's like bat guano is one of them for one of the ones in 3.5.
Yeah,
Where
you
are
got to
you
go
getting
find.
bat guano?
Yeah, are you doing a side quest? Here's the fun part. When you start making them do side quests for their spell inventory, it's like, oh, now you're going to go spelunking in a cave to go
Yeah.
find bat crap. That's
Or
great.
like the dew leaf or something. There's weird like plant ones too, where you're having
Yeah.
to grab a specific plant, which you're not going to keep with you.
Or maybe you are, but the thing is, like, I'm going to have to make you start making rolls to figure out how you got that.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So your druid or your ranger or whatever, or somebody with survival, right, is walking around. Every time they're kind of doing a survival 10 check
Yep.
to constantly be on the lookout for herbs and other things that the wizard or the other sort of spellcasters might need in their spell components. And that's fine, but I
As
need to
a-
know that.
As a quick tangent onto this, since we're talking about things that not a lot of DMs think about,
Oh, yes.
arrows. Not
Arrows.
everybody likes to count arrows, but at certain points, like if you're caving and dungeoning for weeks and they haven't been refilling arrows,
Where did they get
where
them?
is the ranger getting the arrows? And that helps with some of the intensity of making your story a little bit tenses. And you pull back and you have one arrow left.
Yep, now what? Pull out
Now
your
what?
dagger. And the other thing too is you could argue then is like they could say, well, I'm pulling out all my arrows. Okay, that's fine. Every time they do that, roll a percentile die.
Yep.
And that's how many percent actually came out unscathed. So yeah, that's fine. You got 67% of your arrows back. Rounded round down, thank you, whatever that is. Oh, I shot 4 arrows. Cool. So I guess you get 2 arrows back with no problem.
I mean, it's not like D&D has skills and magical items to help with that reason.
Exactly. That's why they want you to spend money. Is you should be counting that. And then the same thing could be said for encumbrance. I mean, you don't have to be a Nazi on like, oh my God, you're like, half a pound over. You're now small. But the problem is if your halfling's running around with a couch worth of a couch worth of stuff.
You guys looted a dragon's hoard. How are you guys getting that out of the dungeon?
Yeah.
That's millions of pounds of gold there.
Well, that's actually, remember when I said that we made, back in one of our other episodes, I said, hey, we made our guy like into a god, and we left him everywhere.
Yeah, you guys kept making copper.
We
couldn't carry it.
Couldn't carry the copper. The DM's like, that copper weighs 800 pounds, and we're like, we'll melt it into something and then sculpt it? Okay, fine. You spend 3 days doing that. Yep, fine by me. We'll spend 3 days sculpting a bronze statue or copper statue because we can't take it out. Actually, we did it with silver statue, and then I had shapeshifted into something and carried it out because it was the only way to get the stupid thing back to town was to make a statue and then carry it out. And then when we got it, because we put handles on it, and then when we got it out, I turned into like some like dire ape or something and lifted it and carried it out to town. And then we melted it down there. I mean, so we actually ended up getting really hilariously inventive, and our storyline was, I thought, better because the DM made us think about encumbrance.
Think around the box.
Right.
What spells and what abilities do you have to work around that? Which just could be going back to town, hiring a few hundred mules, and then just making a train.
Yeah, that's what you do.
Levels. Or 28 spells and a shapeshift later.
Yep, and you're done. So anyway, just this is technically about charm and dominate, but in a lot of ways it's about all your spells, and it's about all these little things that most DMs take into account. And I know we're getting close on time, so I'm just going to mention one other thing. One of my smarter GMs, and I have to say I've not done this, and I really should, literally just made us take off 5 gold a week in game time because that allowed us to compensate for any food, water, drink, and wear and tear on any of our items.
Yeah.
And it was fair enough that we were like, oh, that makes sense because there's a cost to this. And I'll tell you what, that little 5 GP, which was not a lot.
Screwed.
Oh my God, it added up so fast. But it made sense.
Yeah.
So, and even if we were like, in a dungeon for that whole week, then his concept was we had spent that beforehand for rations and things going into it.
Murderella has to eat.
Yeah, what are you eating? Oh, you're chowing down on the orcs you're killing? That's really gross.
Oh, you're staying at an inn. That has a cost.
Exactly. And that was what the 5 GP was just this blanket cost that allowed us to not spend forever and a day playing accounting.
Honestly, if you look in the DMG, that's really, really like lavish in terms of the lifestyle based on what they have in the list price. So
yeah, and that, let's just be honest, all the guys are prima donnas at a certain level. So anyway, that was how we did it, and so there's hopefully a ton of ideas that you can start incorporating into your game today.
Hey, thanks for listening.
And for more resources, please go to skullrpg.com.